Hi, welcome to Talking Youth Work. My name is Rui Branco and together with Anita Silva, we bring you a podcast where we interview youth work experts and practitioners that have a say when it comes to innovation in youth work, either because they are using creative methods to empower young people, researching on youth trends, or responsible for youth policies at international level. Like a shot of inspiration, all of our guests have a unique point of view about how can youth workers shake up, upgrade, and innovate on their daily work.
Hello everyone. We hope that you are having a lot of fun preparing for the end of the year celebrations, whatever it is that you choose to celebrate. This episode was recorded with Virgílio Varela. He's a Portuguese youth worker and trainer and consultant who uses dragon dreaming. And it was really inspiring to hear his journey from being a musician to becoming a youth worker, working in some really challenging neighborhoods around Lisbon many years ago. And the story takes him actually to encounter dragon dreaming. So then he explains us how dragon dreaming helped him transform his own dreams and plans into reality. And from there, we just went on what is it? What is dragon dreaming and how can it help youth workers and young people, especially those that are learning how to pursue their dreams, how to make their projects come true. And for youth workers who want really to give agency to these young people and to co-create shared dreams with communities and transform them into sustainable projects. So this was a wonderful conversation to finish a wonderful year. We want to thank you for being part of that year with us. And we wish you an amazing 2020 with a lot of dreams coming true. Let's talk youth work, guys. Hello, everyone. Hi, Virgílio.
Hello, Anita.
Welcome to Talking Youth Work. Thank you for taking our invitation.
You're welcome.
And we are here with Rui as well. Hi, Rui.
Hi.
So this time we are all talking from Portugal, but each one in their own houses. So we are doing this via Skype. We hope the connection holds. And we invited Virgílio for his experience working with young people and his expertise in something very interesting called dragon dreaming. Virgílio, I would like to start with asking, how did you end up working with young people? How did that happen to you?
Wow, yeah, that's a long story. But I think the beginning was I had a band.
Right.
And my band, it was a musical band, so we were quite popular. And we had a hit song, especially with the African community living in Lisbon. Mm-hmm. And then one guy that was the president of a local NGO had a very difficult task to get young people to study. And then in that specific slum, let's call it a slum, they had high rates of truancies at school, and most of young people did not want to go to school. So he had an idea. He said, well, they like your music, so I would like to invite you to become the maths teacher for this project. And his idea was to invite some of the teachers from the school to come and teach inside the slum. Right. So in that way, young people would not fail. And the local community would put some pressure in terms of reminding them they have to go back to school because school was inside the slum. Mm-hmm. So that was the beginning of my work with young people, kind of more officially.
Wow, that's really interesting. That's a really inspiring beginning.
Yeah, it's interesting because my first day, actually, no one wanted to teach math. That was one of the things.
No one ever does.
The math teacher from the school did not like the idea at all because she didn't like the students in school. So she would never go to the slum where they live to teach. So they had this problem. So I decided to go. And on the first day, I think there were about 20, 22 youngsters. They were a little bit younger than I was. I think the difference was about 4 years. So we were not that far. And then the first day they were already doing, what they normally do is shouting and screaming. And I was about to start the lesson. And they were all speaking Cape Verdean Creole and, just saying whatever they do. But they did not know that I knew Cape Verdean Creole. So
you could understand everything they said.
Yeah. So I started in Portuguese because that was the plan. But then they ignore me completely, and then they're doing whatever they're doing. So I said, well, let's switch to Creole then. And they stopped. And then I did, the whole lesson in Cape Verdean Creole. So the next day I had about 35 people in the classroom. Not only the students, but their parents, because the lessons in maths were going to be given in Creole. So that was my beginning.
Wow. And that says a lot about inclusion, right? When we give that extra step of reaching out to where people are actually, how much of an impact that has, right?
Absolutely. And again, not judging, because the first thing you would do as you get into the classroom would be, stop everything, discipline, shouting. And I was just there, at first I didn't know what to do. So it wasn't that wise, I was just frozen. And then I began to see something emerging within that silence of my own silence. And then that was the hint, because I heard Creole in the environment and I said, well, let's start with that. So that was,
That was the common ground.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really inspiring.
And maybe they saw that you get them, because sometimes the issue is, this person here, they don't understand us. They don't get our problems or our view of the world, and that way maybe they felt accepted in a way.
Yeah. I think that's another thing. Because of the music, they knew me. And so that was one common ground. But the other thing is, like you said, it's speaking a common language in terms of attitude and engagement and respecting what they're doing and how they were doing it. This was the beginning of young people selling drugs in communities. This was kind of the beginning of them having opportunity to buy things that they would never buy. So on that first day, I had one kid interrupting the classroom with the shoe of Nike shoes, the latest one. And they all, stopped everything they were doing just to look at the shoes. So I could see that there were a lot of things that could, be a problem for me and for any teacher. But I just accepted as it was. I didn't judge them. And the following day, they did not do the same thing. But I think sometimes they are testing you, and just to see where you are and how do you react to things.
Yeah. Actually, what is your previous training? Are you a musician? Are you a youth worker? Or what is your previous training?
A math teacher.
A math teacher?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, initially, my degree is in languages, so Portuguese and English, literature. And then I study education in London for 4 years, I think. And the reason I went to London was basically because I wanted to work in education, but without becoming a teacher.
Right.
And the options in Portugal were, either you become a teacher, a social worker, or social cultural animator, or whatever they call it in Portugal.
Yeah.
And none of them was what I wanted to do. I wanted to design educational programs and bring innovation and creativity into them. So I went to London for that.
Okay. And I know you worked then in London as well.
Oh, yes. That was another interesting thing, because when I went to London, I went with my partner at the time, and we didn't know where things were. So I applied for a job that was actually not in London.
You found out when you arrived.
Yeah. So it was really interesting because then when we arrived at the airport, I realized how far the place was. And I realized that I had to leave, probably take the bus at 3 a.m. to get to the place. That was not good news. And the interesting thing was the whole city, all the young people in that city were Gothic,
Wow.
in terms of style and music and so on. So it was nothing to do with my previous experience in terms of music or youth work or whatever. So that was like shocking just to start on that foot, but I learned a lot. I did not get the job at the time because I was late for the interview.
Because you didn't catch the bus.
Wonder why.
At 3 a.m.
But then I applied for another job that was really interesting. Was the beginning of the youth parliament in England.
Wow.
And my role was to set up the youth parliament in Hackney. And Hackney is a borough that normally people associate with high levels of crime, a lot of diversity, especially people from Jamaican background, Somali, and so on. So I had to apply for that job. And it was really interesting because I didn't know anything about the concept of youth parliament, but I thought it was fascinating to give young people power to make decisions on politics and things like that. Applied for that job, I went through a process that was the first time ever to go to such a process. The first thing happened was I was in a room with 15 youngsters, and they all had questions for me. And when I finished that, it was about an hour. And then when I finished that process, I went to another room where all the directors from the council were sitting there asking questions. So I thought that was the end of the process. And they said, no, you need to come back in the afternoon. And then when I was back in the afternoon, I was in a fishbowl. It's a setup where you are in circles. So there's an internal circle and an external circle. So all the best candidates for that role were in the middle of the fishbowl. We were 5. And there were questions about local politics and politics affecting young people in London. I did not know anything about that. I was just, I just arrived from Portugal. I had no idea what was going on. So all my answers to the questions, it was kind of a debate between the 5 of us, and young people and the school and the directors were all watching the process and evaluating. So I was answering the questions that I thought it was making sense to me, but not necessarily what was going on. And then when I left, I said, yeah, that's it. I lost it. And then I had a phone call and they called me and I got the job. So that was a really big surprise for me.
Wow.
And I think maybe one of the reasons was I was just being honest in my opinion, and maybe that resonated with some of the young people that were there.
Yeah, because authenticity is very important, right? It shows in the 2 experiences that you just described, that you reach out to other people when you are able to connect at their level. So this shows the power of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not playing a part that sometimes when we go to apply to some things, or you're the teacher, so you have to behave like the teacher, or you have to know all about politics of this and that. And sometimes it's easy to fall on the trap to be something or someone that you're not.
Yeah, absolutely. And society reinforced that, and your education reinforced that, and your family does that too.
It's true.
So normally people will ask you, what kind of job you do, and they are expecting some of the, existing boxes like lawyer, doctor, or whatever. So in my case, I don't know, and I have many jobs. I do many things, and that's why sometimes people ask me, "What's your background?" Kind of, what the hell?
Human.
Yeah, maybe human background. But again, falling for those boxes, for those roles, it's a trap, because I think humans have such a wide ability and creativity that you can actually do whatever you want, instead of just fitting the box.
It's true. It's true. But
Yeah, but it
going for
sometimes
the
can be
boxes.
sorry, Anita. Oh,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was the other day. My youngest daughter, she had to write in some schoolwork. What's the job of your father? And she started asking, "Oh, you do this, and you do this, and you do this." And I say, "Yes." So what should I write? Write whatever you want. And she started writing a lot of things. And for her, it's normal. And for other kids, the parents only have one thing, and it's diversity, like we were talking about. That is important. Sometimes people are going only to be a lawyer, but there are humans that are going to be a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we all have to start accepting that more and more, because that's the reality of our professional lives nowadays.
Yeah.
Having said that about diversity, I'm going to ask you, what's your box? So how did you end up in Dragon Dreaming? I'm going to that box.
Okay.
What led you to that box? So what led you to that? Maybe it's not a box. Maybe it's a whole field of possibilities. But
It's a door.
how did you? It's a door. How did you get there?
It's interesting because when I was in London, I had the opportunity to learn so many different methods and tools. I had a really access to a lot of information, and I was questioning when I decided to return to Portugal whether I would be accepted or not, because I had so much information, and this could be a problem. So I was attending a training course called Oasis Game. It's a method to invite a whole community to dream and to make that dream come true in 2 days. Right. And it was developed in Brazil, and I was attending this training course. It was fantastic. 8 days, you are immersed in the community. And then in between that course, I was doing a leadership course. And then during the leadership course, I was having a conversation with my colleague about this training I was attending. And then when I finished explaining, she said, well, that sounds pretty much like Dragon Dreaming. And I said, whoa, what's Dragon Dreaming? And then she briefly explained it to me, a method that involves collaboration, sustainability, win-win, and inspiring people to follow their dreams, to make them come true, a process that is really clear, step by step, a meta system. And I was like, wow, what is this? So I started to investigate about Dragon Dreaming. And then I did my first training course in Portugal. There was a German lady that came. I don't know how she ended up coming to Portugal, but she came just for a few days, and I attended the course. And then when I did the course, it was 2.5 days introductory course. I realized that I could immediately apply it. So I applied. I was working for a big trust foundation in Portugal, and I said, well, I'm going to test it. And I tried it in the community with a group of stakeholders, and it was an instant, success, impact. People wanted to know more. We designed new things, like new programs. They were really innovative and involving the whole community, children, and so on. And people started to ask me for more information. And I said, well, I only do this, and this is the introductory course. So I started to investigate, how can I learn more? And I realized that John Croft, an Australian anthropologist, who developed together with a group of people in the Gaia Foundation in Australia, they developed this method, and he was coming to Germany, to the Black Forest. So I decided to go to that training, but it was really expensive. And one of the process inside Dragon Dreaming helps you to fundraise a lot of money for your dream project. And it's done in a way that it's win-win for whoever gives you the money and for you. So I decided to test that, and I just tried it, and people gave me money, and I went to this training course, and I did the advanced course, and then I became a trainer. I did train the trainers in Germany. And then when I returned to Portugal, I started to facilitate. And I think one of my first workshops was in Yeah, in Lisbon. The second workshop was in Lisbon, and Anita was attending that one.
Exactly.
And I know I had so much information to give and so very little time that I had to go through my notes all the time and say, well, I'm not going to talk about this. I'm not going to talk about this. And let's do this. And I was in that mode all the time because my head was buzzing with information. So that was the beginning of my relationship with Dragon Dreaming. The other thing is that the method resonates with a lot of things that I already did in the past, like different methods that I already knew. And it kind of organized everything in one place with a logical sequence and principles. And I was like, I was really inspired by that.
Well, it's really interesting that you started not only learning about it, but immediately implementing it. So it seems like something that is not that hard to start using on a project or on something even personal.
Not at all.
Okay.
I mean, you can actually use Dragon Dreaming to organize your room. You can organize a trip to another country. You can organize your life, like who you want to become in 2020. Or you can apply it to your dream project or to design a startup, for example,
Or for an NGO, for example?
Or for an NGO. And I think especially with young people, and I see the level of awareness about climate change and the environmental issues is raising with young people. And having a method that helps you really, put your dream and the change that you want to see happening, and having a step-by-step method that helps you go through it in a win-win way, in a way that everybody wins in the team, but not only the team, but the community, it's amazing. And I've been trying to share it more with young people. I've done it in schools and projects where people are trying to find alternative ways to educate their children. And it's really, really useful for that.
Okay. I know this is probably a difficult task. You were saying that in this workshop that I was attending, you were buzzing with information, trying to fit everything in 2 days, and it was really hard. And I'm going to ask you even the hardest thing, because I think everybody out there listening is now wondering, what's the method? How does it work? How can you briefly kind of give us an overview of how does it work, or what does it entail, at least?
Okay, so first, I think it's interesting to demystify the name, Dragon Dreaming. And dragon, it's a symbol for our fears, the things that we are afraid of. Okay. And dreaming, it's basically our dreams, our vision for the future. Mm-hmm. And the way it manifests is through creating projects. So in creating a project, you navigate between fears and your dreams. So there are many definitions for Dragon Dreaming, like a project design method, a collaborative, sustainable process for designing amazing projects. And I like sometimes to use the very simple definition that is love in action. Okay. And the reason love is there is because a lot of it's about human being and emotions. And how can you bring humanness into designing a project? And I see it a lot happening in the world, like people do projects, but they end up not wanting to be together again because it was so much painful and so on. So with Dragon Dreaming, it's a very simple process. It's a step-by-step process that has 4 stages: dream, plan, do, and celebrate. And within those 4 stages, you have 12 steps, 3 steps in each of these stages. And by going through that process, by starting with your dream and then moving into the planning to structure your dream, and then going into implementation and really do it and then celebrate, that process is really a magical process to make projects sustainable and collaborative. And the aim of the method is really to bring collaboration at all stages. So when you dream, you're not dreaming alone, you're dreaming together with a dream team. When you plan together. Everybody is engaged in the planning process. And when you execute together. And the celebration is, I think it's something that is very magical in Dragon Dreaming. You celebrate together. The celebration is appreciation for all the contribution for each member of the team, but also seeing people getting outside of their comfort zone, even though failing, but appreciating the effort of doing so. And I see it a lot in projects that people are not seeing, as if they are doing something, but nobody is noticing. And the celebration in Dragon Dreaming is really, noticing people, appreciating, seeing people in their best potential. So Dragon Dreaming is this method that is integrating different things like Aboriginal culture, experience, deep ecology, the knowledge of us being connected with nature, integrates nonviolent communication, how we communicate in projects, how we overcome conflicts, and this vision of win-win-win, that it's got to be winning for the individuals, for the communities, and for the planet.
Wow. Okay, it sounds very powerful. And you mentioned the Aboriginal culture. How is it linked with the Aboriginal culture?
Well, it started in Western Australia, in Perth, where the Gaia Foundation is based. And it started by investigating how Aboriginal people create projects, how they do it. And they found out that first, when they created project, it was a lot of fun. People were having fun. And by researching about it, they found out that there was no word for work in the Aboriginal language that they work with. And the closest word to work was play.
Wow.
So every time they design a project, it's a game. And this shifts your perspective in the way you look at doing things. Because if I invite you to come and do some work with me, it's one kind of energy. If I invite you to come and play with me, it's another level of energy.
Absolutely.
So the playfulness is embedded from the Aboriginal people into the method. And then there are many practices that were inspired by the Aboriginal people. For example, pinakari. Pinakari is a word for deep listening in the Aboriginal people from Mardu, the Mardu people. And deep listening, it's basically connecting to yourself, bringing presence, focusing on your breathing, and making a short pause. It's less than 1 minute. And in that pause, you connect to yourself, you connect to your deepest truth, and then you speak from that energy. So it's really useful when things are foggy or you are in a conflictuous situation in the project. Just making that pause for less than 1 minute will connect you to yourself, to the earth, and to the people around you. So when you speak coming from a process of Pinakari, you speak from the heart. So by practicing that in projects, we can see how much it changes the energy of the project and the relationships. And that is coming from the Aboriginal people, from Mardu people.
And I can really avail for that. I remember in the workshop I did with you back in the days, I remember that Pinakari is something that stayed with me because I'm a bit hyperactive, and so for me to stay quiet and silent and in a meditation-like state is really hard, and it's boring, and I don't like it. But I remember very clearly that in the middle of a discussion with 20 people in the room or something, and when things when, like you said, like when the conversation starts to get foggy and everybody's talking at the same time, or people are not really listening, or there's kind of a stronger debate of opinions, we would do a Pinakari, and when we would start back, it was like it was a different group. Yeah. And I remember that so clearly. It is like we restarted, like reset everything, and suddenly there was a different group of people in the room, and that stayed with me until today. And it taught me a lot. I don't use Dragon Dreaming that much in my practice. I think I should, by the way, but I still didn't manage to. But it teaches me a lot about the importance of kind of this wisdom that groups can find their own peace and work from there, like you said, work from the heart, and that is possible to make that shift in the group in less than a minute. And I think Dragon Dreaming has a lot of this methods that are deeply rooted on ancient wisdom, and that is very powerful.
Yeah, it's really interesting because John Croft and Vivian Ilanta, his partner at the time, they kind of did a lot of training courses. They had the opportunity to know different methods from all over the world, and what they try to do is synthesize and integrate all of those learnings in one method. So I normally call it a meta system, because it's a system of systems aligned with the same principles and the kind of the same intention,
Yes. And it makes sense. Knowing the method, it makes sense the way you describe it, because it does integrate a lot of project management tools, the project cycle as we know it, the more traditional one, but it has so many different twists to it that it makes it efficient in other ways that people generally don't look for.
I wanted to go back a little bit to the 4 stages, to the first one, to dreaming, because you see all over the internet and people talk about it, follow your dreams and follow your dreams. But one thing that I'm sensing right now is people are somehow disconnected, and you ask them, what's your dream? They don't even know it. So how do you begin to awake people's, it's strange, to wake them up to dream?
Interesting. Thank you for that question. I think that there's 2 things I must say in terms of the process. Usually you don't start with dream. You start from the energy of celebration. So, and the celebration is the celebration of your last project, the learnings that came from the last project that you did. By celebrating that project, by looking at all the learnings that came from that project, then you have the energy and the wisdom to think about what new thing can emerge from this learning. So that's one stimulus for the dreaming, to start dreaming. The other thing is, within the dreaming stage, the first stage is awareness. And these are awareness at different levels. Awareness of myself in terms of my strengths and weaknesses, what can I do to change the world? But awareness of a need, of something that needs to be changed, or a problem that exists. So by creating awareness on the problem or the need, and awareness about my abilities, then when I dream from an informed place that is something that is inside of me, that awakens my purpose, and that is needed in the world.
And it's grounded.
It's grounded.
Because you're connected, yeah.
Exactly. So when you go into a process called the dream circle, that is one of the most amazing processes in dragon dreaming, you go from a connected and informed place. So when you dream in a dream team, imagine 5 people dreaming together, the same stimulus of project, but dreaming together around that stimulus. There's an energy shift. There's an energy shift because each of them are going to put one thing that it's magical for them to be in that project, and magical for them to see the change happening. It's a really magical process. And so dreaming, it's awakened dreaming, but it's also connected with your dreams, in the sense that a lot of the needs and a lot of the things that you don't know about yourself, they emerge during dream state. So there are signals that come from the dream state that tells you, oh, this is alive in you, and you must follow this bliss, like Joseph Campbell said. It's like a hero's journey, You hear the call, and the call comes through the need and the dream. It keeps calling you. And once you start that journey, then you follow that hero's journey, or the community journey, or the heroine journey, and so on.
And I think it's very interesting here, because this really connects to a topic that is very hot around Europe and around youth work, which is youth participation. And there's a lot of things written out there about, how to increase participation of young people in communities, in projects, in organizations. But I think that a lot of these advices fail in the practice, because then you really need to do it with an attitude which is very specific, to actually believe that young people can do I don't know, international projects or run an NGO, to actually believe in their capacities is something that is not easy for adults sometimes, because we are, in our own frames of thinking that we know better, we've learned how, they don't know. And with Dragon Dreaming, it's really an invitation for this collaborative, horizontal, supportive collaboration and participation of all. I think that is so inspiring and powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to ask you, how can a youth worker learn more about Dragon Dreaming? Where can they find information or a training or something like that?
Okay, there are many places. Dragon Dreaming, it's kind of now spread out in different continents. So there's recently, John Croft has been in China, Russia, and Africa. I have been to Africa a few times, taking the method. There's an international website at the moment that is being updated. It's a dragondreaming.org.
Mm-hmm.
And then each country, they kind of have their local networks. For example, there's a local network in France, and they have their own website.
Okay.
So Rêver du Dragon, something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And then, for example, Spain have their own network, and then you look for Dragon Dreaming in Spain. And then Brazil has their own network, dragondreaming.brazil, something like that. So as soon as you go on the websites and just Google Dragon Dreaming, you will find many, many places where you can get more information. But dragondreaming.org has been kind of the central place for all the different trainers. So you can see a list of trainers from different countries. You can find me there as well. In Portugal, I have been quite active, but I also been traveling a lot to Brazil, Africa. I was recently in Cape Verde for the first time. And again, it's really beautiful because I was envisioning in January. I was dreaming in January to go to Cape Verde, and it just happened this month.
Wow.
So it's really to believe in the power of dreams.
And did you celebrate?
Oh, yes. I'm into sushi at the moment, so it was just going to sushi.
So I would love to keep learning and talking more about how the method works. We won't have the time, unfortunately, but we invite everybody to check out on the websites. There's a lot of information nowadays in the internet about the method as well. With a few partners, we also released a publication a while ago where we mention it, at least. So you can find resources on the internet about it. And as a tradition in our podcast, we always have a question that the previous guest leaves for the next guest without knowing that it would be you. So we have a question for you. I believe Rui has it. And I think it's very nice because it's very connected to our conversation. Rui, do you wanna spell it out?
Yes. So the question that our latest guest left was, how can we align our own personal passions and values with the passion and values of the organizations we are part of?
Very good question. I was recently doing a work in a big company, and that was the job. They were designing a new vision for the organization, and they wanted the whole team to follow that vision. And what I did was starting with individuals. So I was asking them, what is their personal values and their personal vision for themselves? And this was a surprising question for most of them because they have never asked themselves that question. So I would start with you, just spend some time to see what makes you alive, what's your ikigai, and what's your vision, and what are the values for what you do. But starting just for yourself, and then noticing how your actions are aligned with those values and vision. And then moving into an organization, how can I communicate by acting by whatever ways this value and vision that I have for myself? Because the difficulty sometimes is that we jump straight into the vision of the organization and we try to fit in our lives. And I think it's really interesting to start with yourself. What is your vision and your values? And by doing this exercise, maybe you will find out that the organization that you are in is not aligned with yourself and with what you want to do. And maybe it's time to change. But starting with yourself, I would say it's the best way.
Very interesting.
Very good.
Yes. Yes. And I have to agree with you that we don't dedicate enough time to think and reassess our values, our vision for ourselves, where we are in our own process in our lives. And sometimes we are in an organization and we didn't even realize that we changed, that our vision of ourselves changed, and maybe we were aligned before, we're not anymore. So I think that's a very interesting point of view. And I would like to ask you now to leave a question to our next guest about innovation, youth work, these themes.
Wow. I would go with something. What is the single action that you can do yourself to have the biggest impact in the world?
Okay. What's the single action that him or her can do to have the biggest impact in the world?
Yeah.
That's a powerful one.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, guys. It was really nice to have this conversation. I'm sure that it's going to inspire a lot of people, and it's going to create a lot of curiosity around dragon dreaming. And I'm really happy for that, because it's a methodology that I believe a lot in as well. Thank you, Virgílio, for sharing your wisdom with us.
You're welcome. And I wanted to say, I forgot to mention, there's a lot of information on my website as well about dragon dreaming. I sometimes do short videos, like 1 minute, 2 minute videos about different processes of dragon dreaming, so people can access that information in virgiliovarela.com.
Fantastic. We will add all the resources.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Mm-hmm.
And to ask also Virgílio, all the links that he wants to point people to, we can put it on the post.
Yeah, okay.
Fantastic. Well, have a nice weekend. We're taping this on the weekend. Have a nice weekend, guys. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
It's my pleasure. Bye.
This podcast is produced by Tim Mais with the support of UMAC, University of Applied Sciences.